The rain fell hard that night on the small, dusty colony. The ground near the landing docks was wet and muddy, and cold winds blew through the narrow streets. It was the kind of night when most people hurried home, closing their doors early. The air smelled of wet metal and fuel from ships that had just landed hours earlier. Streetlights flickered as if they were tired too. Daniel walked slowly down the path, his jacket pulled tight around his shoulders. He was not a rich man or an officer. He fixed broken machines for a living, cargo lifters, shuttle panels, farming tools, anything that kept the colony running. He had no family. His life was quiet and simple. Every evening, he walked home after finishing his work, stopping by the old food stand to buy a warm meal. He didn't expect anything special from life, but that night was different. As he passed the edge of the landing docks, he heard a soft sound. At first, he thought it was the wind, but then he heard it again, small, shaky breaths. He stopped and looked around. Behind a half-broken cargo container, two tiny figures were curled up together, shivering in the rain. He slowly stepped closer. The girls looked very young, maybe 5 or 6 years old. Their clothes were soaked and dirty, their hair stuck to their faces. One of them held the other tightly, as if trying to keep her warm. Their eyes were wide with fear, but they didn't make a sound. Daniel knelt down slowly so he wouldn't scare them. "Hey, are you all right?" he said softly. His voice was calm, like someone speaking to a scared bird. The girls didn't answer. The older one just stared at him with guarded eyes while the younger one buried her face in her sister's chest. He took off his thick jacket and wrapped it around both of them. The fabric was warm from his body heat. The younger girl let out a small sigh. She must have been freezing. "You'll catch a fever out here," Daniel said gently. "Let's get you somewhere dry." Still, the girls didn't move. They had the kind of silence that came from fear and hunger, the kind no child should ever have. Daniel didn't know what had happened to them, but he knew one thing. He couldn't just walk away. He opened the small box of food he had bought earlier. The smell of warm bread and broth filled the air. The younger girl's eyes flickered toward the food. He held it out, waiting. Slowly, the older girl reached forward, took the box carefully, and shared it with her little sister. They ate quietly, as if they hadn't eaten in days. Daniel didn't ask questions. He didn't demand answers. He just waited with them in the rain until they were ready to trust. When they had finished eating, he held out his hand. "Come with me," he said softly. "I have a warm room. It's not big, but it's safe. No one will hurt you there." The older girl hesitated. Her small hands were shaking. But then she looked down at her sister, who was already leaning toward Daniel. After a moment, she took his hand. The three of them walked through the muddy streets. Rainwater splashed around their feet, and the wind stung their faces. Daniel led them to a small metal building on the far side of the colony. It was not much. A single room with a workbench, a small heater, and a narrow bed, but it was warm and dry. He handed them towels, gave them his blanket, and put more wood into the old heater. The girls sat huddled together in the corner, still unsure but slowly breathing easier. Daniel poured them hot water with sugar. Their hands were so small they could barely hold the cups. When he asked their names, they didn't answer. It wasn't because they didn't understand. He could see something in their eyes, a kind of deep fear that children their age shouldn't have known. So he didn't press them. "You can tell me when you're ready," he said kindly. That night, Daniel didn't sleep much. He stayed near the heater, keeping the fire going so the girls wouldn't get cold. Every few minutes, the younger one stirred in her sleep, letting out soft cries. He covered them carefully with the blanket each time. For the first time in years, Daniel's small workshop didn't feel empty. The quiet sound of two children breathing softly in their sleep filled the room like something fragile and precious. The next morning, the colony woke up to a bright, cloudy sky. Daniel made some porridge and set it on the small table. When the girls opened their eyes, they looked confused, as if they had forgotten what safety felt like. The younger one sat up first. She smiled, a small, shy smile. That single smile told Daniel everything. "You're safe now," he told them. "You don't have to be afraid here." He gave them clean clothes he had saved from old supplies. They were too big, but the girls didn't seem to care. They looked warmer, less like shadows hiding in corners. For the rest of the day, Daniel didn't go to work. He stayed with them, fixing simple things around the room while they quietly explored the small space. The younger one played with the loose gear wheel like it was a toy. The older one watched everything carefully, still alert, still unsure. When night came again, the girls didn't need to be convinced. They sat near the heater on their own, waiting for the warmth. The younger one even held Daniel's sleeve softly as if to make sure he didn't leave. Daniel didn't know who they were or where they came from. He didn't know if someone was looking for them. All he knew was that they were alone, and now they weren't. Over the next few days, he bought extra food, gave them a safe place to sleep, and made sure no one in the colony disturbed them. He didn't want to draw attention. He just wanted them to heal, slowly, in their own time. One evening, as they sat near the heater, the older girl whispered something for the first time. It was her name. Her voice trembled, but Daniel smiled and repeated it gently, like a promise. The younger girl followed, saying her name too, like a tiny bell ringing in the quiet night. Daniel smiled again, but deep inside, he felt something shift. These girls were no longer just two strangers he had found in the rain. They were a part of his life now. He didn't know what the future held, but he made a silent promise to himself that night. He would protect them no matter what came. Outside, the colony lights flickered against the dark sky. The wind had grown calmer, and the stars above the landing docks shone brightly. In that small metal workshop, 3 lives had quietly crossed paths, and none of them would ever be the same again. Daniel didn't know it then, but the small act of kindness he showed that night would travel far beyond the muddy streets of the colony. It would echo through the years across stars and bring him face to face with a royal destiny he never imagined. Days turned into weeks, and weeks slowly became months. The 2 little girls who once shivered in the rain outside the docks began to smile again. Daniel didn't plan to become anyone's father, but in a quiet, natural way it happened. The girls now had names. The older one was Lyra. She was serious and quiet, always thinking before she spoke. The younger one, Amira, was full of energy. She laughed easily, followed Daniel around like a shadow, and loved to touch every tool in his workshop, even the ones she wasn't supposed to. Daniel built a small extra room out of old panels and wooden boards behind his workshop. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and dry. He gave the girls their own space to sleep, and he moved his tools to the front so their room would stay quiet at night. Every morning he cooked simple meals, warm porridge, bread, and sometimes soup if he had extra money. The girls sat at the small table, their hair messy from sleep, their cheeks pink from the cold, and they looked more alive each day. At first, people in the colony whispered. They asked each other where the girls came from. Some thought he was making a mistake. 2 mouths to feed, they said. He can barely manage himself. Others simply didn't care. But Daniel ignored them all. He never took them in to get praise. He did it because no one else would. Lyra was the first to help in the workshop. She watched Daniel work for hours, quietly learning how to fix broken cargo crates and wiring. She was small, but her hands were steady and she understood things quickly. She didn't talk much, but when she did, it was thoughtful. Amira was different. She preferred to run outside, chasing stray drones and laughing when they beeped at her. She made friends with the delivery robots and named each one. Daniel couldn't help but smile when he saw her playing like a child again. One cold evening, as Daniel repaired a fuel pump, Amira ran in, her boots splashing water on the floor. "Papa!" she shouted without thinking. Daniel froze. It was the first time she had called him that. A simple word, but it went straight to his heart. Lyra stood behind her, shyly hiding her smile. Daniel wasn't a man who cried easily, but something warm spread through his chest. He knelt down and hugged them both gently. "I guess I'm Papa now," he whispered with a smile. From that moment on, their bond became stronger. Life wasn't easy. Daniel worked extra hours to buy enough food and keep them warm during cold nights. He often came home tired, his hands covered in oil, but the sound of the girls' laughter always made his heart lighter. Sometimes Amira would run and jump on his back, and Lyra would quietly hand him a towel to clean his hands. They started helping around. Lyra learned to handle simple repairs, and Amira took care of sweeping the floor and organizing small parts. The workshop no longer felt empty. It felt like a home. At night, Daniel told them simple stories, some from his childhood, others made up to make them laugh. Lyra always listened carefully, while Amira would fall asleep halfway through, her head resting on his arm. Every winter, storms hit the colony hard. That year, a terrible storm came. Strong winds shook the buildings and rain pounded the metal roofs like drumbeats. Daniel had barely enough wood to keep the heater burning through the night. But the girls wrapped themselves in old blankets and huddled close to him. "It's okay," he told them softly. "Storms don't last forever." In that small workshop, with the heater crackling and the girls breathing softly beside him, Daniel realized something he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't alone anymore. One day, Lyra surprised him. She walked to the workbench, picked up a small panel, and began repairing it. Her movements were careful, almost professional. "Where did you learn that?" Daniel asked. She looked up, her eyes bright. "Watching you," Daniel smiled proudly. She was growing up fast. Amira, of course, wanted to join too. She tried to help but ended up dropping a tool on the floor. She laughed, and Daniel couldn't help but laugh with her. Soon, customers began to notice. Daniel's small workshop became faster and more organized. People started to bring in more work because they liked the cheerful sound of laughter coming from inside. The girls had brought light into a place that was once silent. At night, after the girls went to bed, Daniel often sat alone by the heater, looking at their sleeping faces. He wondered where they had really come from. Their language, their old silence, and their careful way of observing everything still made him curious. But he never pushed them to talk. He believed trust should never be forced. One late afternoon, a traveler came through the colony. He was a merchant, carrying goods from distant systems. He noticed the girls and asked Daniel where they were from. Daniel only said, "They're my daughters now." "That's all that matters." The merchant nodded, but his eyes stayed on the girls longer than Daniel liked. It made him uneasy. That night, Daniel double-checked the locks on the doors. He didn't want anyone taking them away. The next few months were peaceful again. The girls grew healthier. Their cheeks were round, their hair shiny. Lyra began to help with books and orders while Amira ran errands to nearby shops. Slowly, the colony accepted them. People began greeting them on the street. Some even brought them small gifts, a scarf, a warm bread roll, or spare clothes. For the first time since they were found near the docks, the girls felt they belonged. One evening, Amira fell sick. She had a fever and couldn't stop shivering. Daniel panicked. He rushed through the colony looking for a doctor. The doctor said it was just a winter fever, but Daniel stayed up all night anyway. He sat beside her bed, holding a warm cloth to her forehead. "Don't leave," she whispered weakly. "I won't," he promised. Lyra sat beside him, quietly holding Amira's hand. All through the night, Daniel kept the heater burning and made sure she had water. By morning, the fever had broken. Amira opened her eyes and gave him a tired smile. Daniel felt a weight lift from his heart. At that moment, he knew something for sure. He wasn't just a man who found two girls anymore. He was a father. As the years passed, their little home became a small family. Daniel learned how to braid hair, though badly, how to calm bad dreams, and how to make soup when they were sick. In return, the girls gave him love, laughter, and a purpose he didn't know he needed. They had no blood bond, but their hearts were tied stronger than anything else. On quiet nights, when the girls were asleep, Daniel often looked at the stars outside the workshop window. He wondered about their real past. Sometimes he caught Lyra staring at the same stars, her eyes distant. He knew there was a story they hadn't told him yet. But he also knew that whatever it was, it didn't change the simple truth they were family. And even though Daniel didn't know it yet, their peaceful little life on the colony was only the beginning of a much bigger journey, one that would reach across the stars and bring him face to face with a destiny far beyond anything he imagined. For now, though his world was enough, two daughters laughing in a small workshop and a father who loved them more than anything else. The years passed quietly, but quietly did not mean easily. Lyra and Amira grew taller and stronger, but the past they had carried in silence was never far away. Small hints of it began to appear, subtle but unmistakable. Knowledge they should not have had, gestures that seemed too practiced for children. and strange markings that sometimes glimmered faintly on their skin. Daniel noticed these things, but he never asked. He believed that trust was more important than questions, and that love was stronger than curiosity. Lyra often stared at the night sky with wide, thoughtful eyes. She had a way of seeing beyond the stars beyond the colony, and Daniel sometimes caught her whispering words he could not understand. Amira, in contrast, had a vivid imagination that mixed play and memory in ways Daniel couldn't always follow. She would run around telling invisible figures what to do, or speaking in a language that sounded strange even to the traders and travelers in the colony. One evening, while Daniel was repairing an old shuttle engine, Lyra approached him quietly.
"Papa," she said softly, "why do people look at us differently sometimes?"
He wiped his hands on a rag and looked at her. "Because they don't know us," he replied gently. "They only see what they want to see. But I know you, both of you, and that's all that matters." She nodded but didn't answer further. Daniel sensed there was more she wanted to say, but some truths, he understood, would reveal themselves in time. He was patient. As the girls entered their teenage years, the colony noticed changes too. Lyra became skilled at repairing machines, managing orders, and even guiding customers through complicated work. She carried herself with a quiet confidence that made people respect her. Amira, though still playful, began to demonstrate a remarkable understanding of strategy, always noticing details others overlooked. It was during one of these routine days that something unusual happened. A freighter arrived at the landing docks carrying cargo from a distant system. Amira, curious as always, ran to the edge of the dock, watching the landing sequence. Suddenly, she froze. Her small body went rigid, her eyes wide with recognition, and she whispered a word in that strange language Daniel had never understood. Daniel rushed to her side.
"What is it, Amira?"
he asked. She shook her head. I think I know where we came from," she stammered. Lyra stepped forward, her hands clenched, her face pale. "We need to talk," she said quietly. That night, under the dim light of their small workshop, the girls finally told Daniel everything they had held in their hearts for so many years. They spoke carefully, hesitantly, as if revealing their story might break the world around them. "We are not ordinary children," Lyra began. We are from a royal line. Our home, our family, they were attacked many years ago. We were hidden, sent away to survive. That's why we do not remember much, why we appeared alone on the docks." Daniel listened in silence, his heart steady despite the shock. His 2 daughters, the children he had raised with love and care, were heirs to a royal bloodline. He could see the weight of the truth pressing on them. "You don't have to worry about us leaving," Lyra continued. "You are our family. You saved us when no one else could. You gave us love. We would never forget that." Daniel knelt down, holding their hands. "You were never alone after that day," he said. "I don't care about crowns, titles, or worlds. You are my daughters. That will never change." The girls let out a small, relieved sigh. For the first time, they allowed themselves to feel safe again, not just physically, but emotionally. The revelation brought new challenges. Daniel worried about people discovering the girls' true identities. He fortified their small home, taught them how to be cautious, and reminded them that trust must be earned. Lyra and Amira, despite the knowledge of their royal heritage, respected him for the simple man who had given them life, safety, and love. Yet, strange things began happening around them. Messages in coded languages appeared on their doorstep. Ships occasionally lingered too long in the orbit above, and traders whispered of royal bloodlines lost long ago. Daniel remained vigilant. He was not a soldier, nor a diplomat. He was a father, and that was enough to guide his decisions. The girls began training subtly. Lyra learned to read the maps of distant systems, memorize languages, and understand the basics of negotiation and leadership. Amira trained her mind for observation, strategy, and memory. They were children, yet their royal heritage demanded skills they would need one day. Daniel supported them not as a teacher, but as a parent, encouraging, guiding, and protecting. One night, as a calm breeze flowed through the open window, the girls came to him. "Papa," Amira said softly, "do you think we will ever see our home again?" Daniel paused. "Maybe," he said, "but home isn't just a place. It's where people care for each other." You have a home with me now. That is real. That is enough for today. Lyra nodded. And if one day we must go back to our world, will you be angry? Daniel shook his head firmly. Never. I want what is best for you, always. You will always be my daughters, no matter where you go. The girls smiled faintly, reassured by the simple truth. They may have royal blood, hidden secrets, and a destiny they didn't fully understand yet. But the foundation of their lives was built on love, patience, and trust. Months passed quietly again, and life in the small colony became a rhythm of work, learning, and laughter. But the past never fully disappeared. The girls would occasionally speak in the strange language among themselves, the letters and sounds carrying hints of their origin. Daniel pretended not to understand because he didn't want to interrupt their comfort. Then one evening, a small ship appeared in orbit over the colony. It was sleek, unlike any freighter or transport Daniel had ever seen. Its design was elegant, powerful, and unmistakably not from their world. The girls stood silently staring at it. Lyra's lips parted in shock. Amira clutched his sleeve. It's them, Lyra whispered. Daniel felt his heart tighten. He had known this moment might come someday. The world from which the girls had been hidden was reaching for them. He didn't know if it was rescue or something more complicated. All he knew was that his daughters needed him, and he would be ready. He looked at the girls, and their faces reflected the same mixture of fear and excitement he felt inside. Whatever happens, he said, we face it together, always. The girls nodded. In that small moment, the bond between them and Daniel grew stronger than ever. They were ready in their own way to meet the truth of their origins, but no matter where destiny took them, they would not be alone. Daniel watched the star above, its lights blinking with purpose, and felt the first stirrings of a destiny far larger than their small colony. His daughters, the children he had raised with love and patience, were about to step into a world he had never known existed, and he would be there with them. For now he could only wait, preparing silently for the day when the past would finally meet the life they had built together. The sun rose slowly over the small colony, painting the dusty streets in shades of gold and orange. Daniel was fixing a broken cargo lifter when a distant hum caught his attention. At first he thought it was a regular shuttle arriving, but the sound was different, deeper, heavier, and steady. He wiped his hands and looked up. High above the colony, a massive starship descended from orbit. Its hull glinted in the morning light, and golden emblems shimmered across its surface. The ship was elegant, unlike any craft Daniel had ever seen. Its size alone blocked out part of the sun, and a quiet awe fell over the colony. People began gathering, murmuring to each other, pointing at the enormous vessel in the sky. Inside, the royal crew prepared to disembark. They had traveled far and wide, carrying a message that had been years in the making. Their mission was clear: find the children of the lost royal bloodline and return them to their rightful place. But the story had an unexpected twist. When they scanned the colony, they found someone who had protected the children all these years. A man unknown to them, yet responsible for saving 2 lives that had been hidden for so long. Daniel felt the air change. Lyra and Amira came running, their eyes wide as they stared at the descending starship. Amira clutched Daniel's sleeve, her small hands trembling. Lyra's expression was serious, almost rigid, but her hands shook slightly. It's them, Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. Daniel nodded, holding them close. He had expected this day might come, though he never knew when or how. For years he had prepared them gently, teaching them caution, patience, and respect. Now the past had arrived. The colony's usual calm turned into a mixture of awe and fear. People whispered to one another, pointing at the massive ship. A royal starship? Someone said. After all these years? Another shook their head. Who could it be looking for? The starship landed with surprising grace, its massive thrusters barely disturbing the dust. A ramp extended from its hull, and guards in gleaming armor stepped forward. They moved with precision, scanning the colony carefully. At their head was a tall figure with golden insignia, clearly the leader. Daniel stepped in front of the girls instinctively, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. Stay close, he said softly. The guards stopped at the edge of the colony square. Their leader spoke into a translator device. We are here for the royal heirs, he announced. The voice was calm but firm, carrying the weight of authority. Amira's eyes grew wide. That's us, she whispered to Daniel. Lyra took a deep breath and nodded. One of the royal guards began walking toward them. Daniel's heart raced, but he held his ground. The girl's hand squeezed his tightly. The guard looked at the girls, then at Daniel. "Are these the children?" he asked, voice steady. "They are," Daniel said. "I found them 12 years ago. They are my daughters. I have raised them and cared for them." The guard glanced at him, then back at the girls. There was respect in his eyes. "You have protected them for all this time," he said. "Your courage will not be forgotten." Lyra stepped forward, holding Daniel's hands. "He is our family," she said firmly. "Without him, we would not be alive today. He raised us, taught us, loved us. He is our father." Amira nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Papa is ours, always." The guard paused, then gave a slight bow of acknowledgement. "Then he will come with you," he said. "Not as a servant or guest, but as a protector and parent. His place is with you." Daniel felt his heart stop for a moment. He never expected this. For years he had lived simply, giving love without asking for reward. Now fate had returned that love in a way he could never have imagined. The colony watched in stunned silence as Daniel, Lyra, and Amira approached the Starship. The girls led him by the hand, their steps confident but full of emotion. For them, this was not just a reunion with their past. It was a recognition of the man who had given them life again. Inside the Starship, the halls were enormous, shining with polished metal and soft lights. The girls' royal attendants guided them carefully, explaining their world, their family, and the systems they would now be a part of. Daniel listened quietly, feeling slightly out of place yet proud. He was no longer just a mechanic from a distant colony. He was the father of royal heirs, entrusted with a responsibility that no one else could have fulfilled. The girls introduced him to their lineage. Their parents had ruled a distant star system before tragedy struck. Messages had been sent, orders given, and finally, a team was dispatched to locate the children who had survived. But what the royal delegation did not anticipate was the man who had raised them as his own. Daniel didn't need titles or crowns. All he cared about was that the girls were safe, happy, and loved. And now they had brought him into a world that seemed almost like a dream, but it was real. Later, Daniel sat with the girls in a private chamber overlooking the colony below. The city looked so small from this height, and he could see the work he had done for them. The nights spent repairing shuttles, the days spent laughing in the sun. "I never imagined this," he said softly. "I never thought my life would lead to this." Lyra smiled, a mix of pride and affection on her face. "It wasn't just about you, Papa. You gave us something no one else could: home, love, and safety. You made us strong enough to face our past." Amira leaned her head on his shoulder. "And now we can go back with you, together." Daniel hugged them tightly, feeling a weight lift from his heart. 12 years of quiet sacrifice, of love without reward, had led to this moment. He didn't need to be king or soldier or hero. He only needed to be their father. And now, the universe itself recognized that. As the sun set on the colony, the Royal Starship's engines hummed softly. Daniel looked at the horizon, knowing that his life was about to change in ways he could never imagine. But for the first time in years, he felt complete. He had found the children, loved them, and been recognized not by blood but by the strength of the bond they shared. The girls squeezed his hands, and together, they walked toward the Starship. Daniel knew the journey ahead would be long, full of wonders and challenges. But with Lyra and Amira by his side, he could face anything. For Daniel, it was not about titles or wealth. It was about family, the family he had chosen, nurtured, and loved with every part of his heart. And now across the stars that love would be honored. The Starship lifted slowly, leaving the small colony behind. Its golden lights shimmered against the night sky, a symbol of hope, recognition, and a destiny that had waited patiently for 12 long years. Daniel, looking at the girls who had once been lost and alone, whispered softly, "We made it, together." And for the first time in his life, the future felt bright, certain, and full of promise. The Starship glided smoothly through the black of space, its golden lights shining like a beacon across the stars. Inside, Daniel walked with Lyra and Amira, marveling at the world around him. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Vast corridors of polished metal, rooms filled with light, and a quiet sense of order and purpose that made him feel both small and important at the same time. The girls held his hands tightly, their small fingers curled around his. Though they had grown into young women, The bond they shared with Daniel had only strengthened over the years. They had survived hunger, fear, and loneliness together, and now they were stepping into a world that could have seemed impossible when they were small, shivering children on a rainy night in the colony. The royal attendants guided them to the private quarters where the girls would live and learn. The room was large yet cozy, decorated simply but elegantly. Lyra and Amira's eyes shone with excitement and awe. "Papa," Lyra said softly, looking up at him. This is our home now, but it will never feel like home without you." Daniel smiled, his eyes misty. "Home is not about walls or lights," he said gently. "Home is wherever we are together. That will never change." Amira nodded, her head resting against his arm. "You are our family, Papa. Always. Even if we travel to the farthest stars, you are still ours." Daniel felt a warmth spread through him, stronger than any pride or happiness he had ever known. 12 years of struggle, quiet sacrifice, and love without reward had led to this moment. The universe itself seemed to recognize the strength of their bond. Over the next few days, Daniel learned more about the girls' past. They told him stories their parents had shared before tragedy struck, the history of the royal bloodline, and the challenges they would face in the galaxy. Daniel listened carefully, never judging, never doubting. He realized that the lessons he had taught the girls, patience, courage, kindness, would serve them as much in the royal courts and star systems as they had in the small colony. The girls also introduced Daniel to the crew and officials of the royal starship. At first, many were curious about the man who had raised royal heirs in secret. Some questioned his abilities, wondering if he could truly guide and protect the girls in a world of power and politics. But Lyra and Amira spoke with pride and respect. "This is Papa," Lyra said firmly during one meeting. "He saved us. He raised us. He is our father. He has protected us more than anyone else could." The room fell silent for a moment, and then one by one, the officials nodded. Respect replaced curiosity. Daniel, though simple and humble, had earned a place among the stars. Not through titles or inheritance, but through his love, courage, and commitment. One evening, Daniel walked with the girls to the observation deck. Outside, the galaxy stretched endlessly, glittering with stars and planets. The lights of distant worlds shone like diamonds. "You see those stars?" Daniel asked softly. "They are all far away, but it doesn't matter how far we go, or what challenges we face. As long as we are together, we will always find our way." Amira smiled. "You were right, Papa. We were lost once, but you gave us a home. That is what matters. Not stars, not titles, not crowns. Home is here with you," Lyra nodded. "And now we can face our past knowing we are strong. Because you taught us how to be brave, how to love, and how to never give up." Daniel felt tears prick his eyes. He had never expected reward or recognition. All he had ever wanted was to keep two little girls safe, to give them love and hope. And now the universe itself had returned that gift tenfold. The following week, a ceremony was held on the Starship. Lyra and Amira were officially recognized as heirs of their royal lineage. Gold insignia were pinned to their uniforms, and messages were read aloud from distant planets celebrating their survival. Daniel stood beside them, not as a servant or guard, but as a father honored for his courage and devotion. When the ceremony ended, the girls embraced him tightly. "Papa," Amira whispered, "you are our hero. Not just for saving us, but for loving us every day." "You are our world," Lyra added. "We may travel the stars, meet kings and queens, but we will never forget the man who gave us everything when we had nothing." Daniel hugged them both, feeling the weight of the years lift from his shoulders. All the lonely nights, the struggles, and the small sacrifices had led to this moment of recognition and love. He realized that love, given freely and without expectation, could change the course of lives, even across worlds. Days passed, and Daniel settled into his new life aboard the Starship. Though the technology, the rules, and the expectations of the royal crew were new to him, the girls guided him, teaching him the importance of patience, observation, and understanding. Together, they explored the Starship, repaired its small systems, and learned about its history and purpose. The girls thrived under his care, but now, with the recognition of their royal lineage, they also grew in confidence and skill. They studied strategy, diplomacy, and leadership. Daniel's teachings, honesty, kindness, courage, proved invaluable in their education. Wherever they went in the galaxy, They would carry not only their heritage but also the lessons of love and resilience their father had given them. One night, Daniel stood at the observation deck, looking out at the glittering stars. He thought about the rainy night on the colony, when he had found two frightened little girls huddled in fear. He thought about every sleepless night, every moment of worry, every small joy that had built the family they had become. He smiled softly. The journey had been long, full of struggle and uncertainty, but it had been worth it. The universe had its own way of returning love to those who gave it freely. The girls joined him quietly, leaning on his shoulders. "Do you see those stars?" Lyra asked softly. "They are bright, but they are nothing compared to you." "You are our brightest star, Papa." Amira nodded in agreement, "And we will always follow you wherever we go." Daniel looked at them, his heart full. He realized that the true journey had never been about royalty, recognition, or even the Starship itself. It had been about family, trust, and love. That was what had given them strength. That was what had carried them across 12 years of hardship and fear, and that was what would guide them into the future. As the Starship glided silently through the galaxy, Daniel, Lyra, and Amira stood together at the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly, but their hearts were steady. They had survived the impossible, faced the unknown, and now they were together, a family stronger than anything the universe could throw at them. Daniel whispered softly, more to himself than anyone else, "We made it, together." And above the black canvas of space, the Starship carried them forward, not just to new worlds, but into a future shaped by love, courage, and the unbreakable bond of family. The journey was far from over, but they had already found something far more powerful than destiny or royal heritage. They had found each other, and that, Daniel knew, was enough.